It was the winter of 1989 when Michael Reeds, freelance journalist based in Portland, Oregon, received a strange, unsigned letter in his mailbox. If you want to uncover the truth, come to Hollow Creek, but beware those who hear the bell don't always return. A former resident, Michael had always been drawn to tales of the unexplained. He'd written about ghost towns, missing hikers, cursed relics, but this was different. Hollow Creek was a near-forgotten village nestled in the Cascade Mountains, known for bizarre disappearances every 20 years. Exactly in winter. Something about the tone of the letter felt personal. Urgent. He packed his camera, tape recorder, flashlight, and notebook, and made the 5-hour snowy drive to Hollow Creek. As he approached the town, an eerie stillness blanketed everything. No traffic, no animals, not even the crunch of snow beneath. His boots seemed normal. Most of the homes were abandoned. Their wooden frames groaned with age, and windows stared blankly like the eyes of something long dead. He finally spotted an old man sitting on a rocking chair in front of a rundown cabin. The man's eyes were clouded, but alert. "You lost, son," the old man croaked. Michael introduced himself. "Name's Reeds. I'm a journalist. I got a letter about a bell." The old man's face went pale. "You heard the toll?" he asked. "No, but I was told it rings every 20 years. The man nodded slowly. "Name's Earl. Last of the living folks round here. That bell ain't meant to be heard, not by living ears." He motioned for Michael to follow him, limping toward a snow-covered path that led to the heart of the town. They arrived at what looked like an old church. The steeple was half collapsed, and time had blackened its walls. Inside, above the altar, hung a large rusted iron bell, suspended by a rotted beam. "That's it," Earl whispered. "No rope, no clapper, and yet, on the 9th of December, every 20 years it rings." Michael took notes. "Any idea who or what rings it?" Earl stared at the bell, eyes distant. "They say it's her, the Lady of Hollow Creek. Name was Karen Mayfield, a preacher's daughter. Went missing in 1869. Folks thought she drowned in the well behind the church, but her body was never found." Michael turned toward him. "You think she's real?" Earl's voice dropped. "I know she is. I saw her once." He wouldn't say more. That night, Michael set up camp in one of the few houses that still had walls and a roof. Cold crept through every crack, but exhaustion won over fear. Around 2:17 a.m., Michael's eyes shot open. A sound, faint, metallic, do-n-n-n-n-n-g. Donung. Donung. It was the bell. Michael grabbed his recorder and flashlight and stepped into the snow. The sound wasn't coming from the church. It was distant, deeper, as if underground. He followed the echo through the woods toward, with the back of the church, where the old well Earl mentioned stood under a bare tree. Snow was scattered around the well. Something had recently disturbed it. Michael approached slowly. A sign, nailed to the wooden frame of the well, read, "Do not look in, it looks back." He leaned over. The well was black, impossibly deep. The light from his flashlight vanished in the darkness. Then a whisper floated up. "Michael." He stumbled back, heart racing. A long, pale hand reached up and gripped the stone edge, then the other, and slowly, silently, something began pulling itself out. A woman, drenched in black water, with tangled raven hair covering her face, and a mouth that didn't belong on anything human-wide. Wet, full of teeth that clicked when she smiled. Michael ran. He didn't look back, but the bell rang one more time before he reached shelter. Do-n-n-n-n-g. And this time it was inside his head. Michael didn't sleep that night. He locked the cabin door, pushed a table against it, and sat in the corner with his flashlight and recorder. Snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the decaying village in silence, but no amount of snow could bury the sound still echoing in his ears. Dawning, he replayed the recording, hoping it had captured what he saw. But the tape was filled with static, broken only by one chilling phrase, not in his voice. "You looked, now she sees." By morning, Earl was gone. The rocking chair sat empty, coated with a thin layer of snow. Michael knocked on the cabin door. Nothing. He walked in, only to find the fireplace still warm and the kettle boiling. On the table was an old photograph in a cracked wooden frame. The photo was of Karen Mayfield, unmistakable even in black and white. Same dark hair, same unsettling smile. But something was wrong. Michael was also in the photograph, standing behind her in the corner, watching. He dropped it. "No," he muttered. "This is impossible. This was taken over 100 years ago." Just then, the air shifted, like someone had opened a door, without touching it. Michael turned and saw wet footprints, bare human, and heading out the back of Earl's cabin. Toward the church he followed. Inside the ruined chapel, the bell still hung unmoving, but now the altar was covered in water, like something had been crying or bleeding from it. Behind the altar was a hatch in the floor, half covered by rotting wood. Michael hadn't noticed it before. He pulled the boards aside and found a narrow staircase descending into the dark beneath the church. Against every instinct he had, he went down. The basement was cold but not empty. Dozens of wax dolls lined the walls, each with button eyes and names written in blood-red ink. Earl, Martha, Timothy, Clara. Then he saw a new doll, still soft, still warm. Its name stitched crudely, Michael Reed's. He backed away, nearly tripping over something solid. A small coffin, unsealed. Inside, lying perfectly still, was his own body, eyes shut, hands folded. But as he stared, the corpse's eyes opened. Michael screamed and ran back up the stairs, only to find the church door now nailed shut from the outside. And then the bell rang again, donning. This time it wasn't deep or distant, it was right above his head. He turned slowly, and there she was, Karen, draped in soaked funeral garments, hair hiding her eyes. She stood on the altar, but her feet didn't touch the ground. They hovered. Her voice was not spoken but felt, pressed into his skull like cold fingers. You looked, you listened. Now you must ring. Michael fell to the ground, clutching his ears. Blood poured from his nose. I didn't mean to, he gasped. I was just investigating, but Karen didn't move. She simply raised her hand, and in it appeared a small rusted bell, the kind used in old funerals, to wake the dead. She placed it in front of him and disappeared. The door creaked open. Michael stumbled out into the now storming snow. The wind howled like screams, and trees bent as though bowing to something in the air. He looked down at the bell in his hands. It was warm, alive, and it wasn't his choice anymore. He had been chosen to ring it. Michael stumbled back into Earl's cabin as the storm raged outside. He clutched the funeral bell in both hands, afraid to drop it but more afraid to use it. His mind raced. Why me? What does it mean to ring? What happens if I do or don't? He tried calling for help. No signal, no power. Even his voice seemed swallowed by the cabin walls. Then he noticed something horrifying. His reflection was gone. The cracked mirror by the fireplace empty. No Michael, just the room. He reached out, touching the glass. Cold. Suddenly a hand reached out from the other side of the mirror, identical to his own, but then it clenched his wrist tight. It pulled. Michael yanked himself free. The skin on his wrist seared with a black mark that looked like a rune, or maybe a bell. He backed away, heart thudding. The bell in his hand began to vibrate, humming softly like it was hungry. Then came a whisper, not from outside but from within the walls. You have until midnight, or you stay. Michael's journal was now filled with writings he didn't remember writing. Whole pages scribbled in dark ink. The bell must ring. The bell feeds. Only one escapes, and most disturbing of all, Earl rang it last time. That's why he lived. Michael flipped through the pages in panic until he found a final scrawled note, in a different, almost childlike handwriting. If you don't ring it, she does. The time was now 11:55 p.m. The storm had died down. The church stood again in silence. Michael walked slowly toward it, bell still clutched in his shaking hand. He pushed the doors open. Inside, the air had changed. It was warm, too warm, like breath on skin. And he wasn't alone. The pews were full of figures, unmoving. All the missing people of Hollow Creek, sitting with glassy eyes, dressed in burial clothes. Earl was among them. Still and pale. In the center aisle stood Karen, her face finally visible. She wasn't young anymore. Her skin was cracked porcelain, her mouth stitched partially shut, but her eyes were enlivened, full of grief. She opened her hand. Time, she said. Ring. Michael looked around. One bell, dozens of souls, all trapped because someone had to ring it every 20 years. It wasn't a curse, it was a contract. 11:59 p.m. Michael raised the bell. His hand trembled. Karen stepped forward. Her feet touched the ground now. No floating. She looked more human, less ghost. I won't do it, Michael said. Then you'll stay, she whispered, and another will come just like you. He looked at Earl. His eyes opened for a brief moment, just enough to whisper, ring it, kid. It's the only way to go home. Michael squeezed his eyes shut and rang the bell. Ding. It wasn't loud, but it echoed like thunder through the church. Every figure in the pews gasped, then turned to ashes. The bell in Michael's hand turned ice cold, then cracked. Karen smiled. Not wickedly, softly. You're free, she said, and then she vanished. The next morning, Michael woke up in his apartment in Portland. No sign of the bell, no mark on his wrist, but on his desk was a small box. Inside, a single photograph. Michael standing